Hi there, second graders, and welcome to week 7 of distance learning. This week, we are going to revisit some thinking about informational books. And if you remember from school, we've talked a lot about how Mrs. Cook just absolutely loves informational books. There are so many different types, but before I get into that, just a few reminders. We're going to still have office hours this week, 12:30 to 1:30, and our all-class meeting on Friday, same time. But thinking ahead to next week, it's going to be a shorter week, but we are still going to be doing some learning next week. And I posted on our school story in Class Dojo that we are going to have a special all-class Zoom meeting on Wednesday, June 3 from 10:30 to 11:30. And from 10:30 to 11, third grade teachers, Mrs. Stolars and Mrs. Benzel, are actually going to be joining us in our meeting. They'd like to meet you and tell you a little bit about third grade, what to expect. What I ask of you is if you have any questions for them, please write them down and have them ready to go. Every year at the end of the year, they like to come in and just chat for a little bit so you know what to expect for next year. One other thing about that meeting too, I just ask that in some of our office hours and Zoom meetings, I've been okay with you like changing your name in your profile for your Zoom meeting, but for that particular meeting, we're going to show a lot of respect to those other teachers by keeping our name what it is so they can actually get to know who you are by seeing your name on the screen. But we can talk more about that later. I'll be sending some messages about that soon. So informational books, as we call nonfiction at school typically, can come in lots of different kinds of forms. So looking at our learning target, I drew some of those different types of informational books. So our learning target today is readers learn from informational books. We've talked a lot about genre this year, and informational books can be written in lots of different ways. So if you have a manual that comes with a game or a car, that's a type of informational book. A biography is the special kind that teaches you about a real person. An all about can be lots of different things. All abouts tell us about something specific, and typically the writers of these books will name their books what they're teaching you about. So this is about mountains. This one in particular is about baby giraffes. This one right here is called The Titanic, and sometimes writers can write a book of information written in like a story format. So sometimes with those kinds of books, we have to dig a little bit to actually get the information, like in this one, Titanic Lost and Found. It's telling the story of what happened. Well, today, through our learning, we're going to dive into this book, From Seed to Plant by Gail Gibbons. And I picked this one in particular because I started this spring planting some tomatoes, and I wanted to learn a little bit more about how I could best take care of them. So often when readers read informational books, they ask these types of questions through their reading or after their reading. How does this information help me? How does the information help me understand the world? How does the information help me understand myself a little bit more? Or they might ask, what does the author want me to learn or understand? Just like the work that we did last week in fiction books, we can still think about the purpose that the author has for writing that information for us in their books. So for me, as I was reading From Seed to Plant, I was asking, how does the information help me? As I read through the entire book, when I got to a certain section in this book, I started really focusing on my stop and jots because that was the information I needed to help me with planting and growing my tomato plants. So I'm just going to kind of do a quick flip through the book. It taught me here about seeds, their purposes, and what they do. Here it taught me how the seed or the plant grows, the parts of the plants, They zoomed in on some flowers. Here they talked about how seeds travel. It's not really helping me with my tomato plants yet, but it did give me some good information. Here is where I got really excited. In this part, Gail Gibbons starts to teach us about how to plant a garden. Right here, it started telling me about what happens to the seed before it starts growing. And this is where I really zoomed in and started taking a lot of stop and jots to help myself. It says, when the sun shines and warms the ground, the seed coat breaks open and the seed begins to grow. This is called germination. A root grows down into the soil. The root takes in the water and minerals from the soil for food. Now, I already understood some things about what my plant would need to help it grow, but this is where I stopped and made some notes just to make sure I knew what I was doing. So I put seed opens, plant comes out. Then I wrote roots are for gathering water. So that helped me when I went to go water my tomato plants. Instead of spraying the water all up on the top of the plant, on top of the leaves, I decided to water the soil because I knew those roots were down below, and if they're like the straws that suck up the water, that's where I need to put the water for that. So that part helped me a lot with that, with taking care of my tomatoes. Right here it says up grows a shoot. Green leaves grow up from the shoot toward the sun. So that got me wondering about where the leaves would want to be. Gail Gibbons started talking more about that part here. It says the plant grows bigger and bigger. The leaves make food for the plant from the water and the minerals in the soil, the sunlight and the air all around the plant. So I did some more stop and jots here. I said room to get air. I needed to make sure of my tomato plants I had nothing blocking its ability to get some good airflow around it. And then also I wrote down leaves need to be in the sun. So when I took my tomato plants, which are growing in pots, I'm not planting them in the ground, I needed to find a very special spot on my deck where I knew it would get the most sun all day. And when we're all done here, I'll kind of show you where I have my tomato plants. On the next page, it says, finally, the plant is full grown. Buds on the plant open into flowers where new seeds will grow. So right here, I put flower and then I drew an arrow tomato. I'm thinking that since it says new seeds will grow, and I know tomatoes have seeds in them, I'm thinking, even though this isn't showing a tomato plant, I can take the information from here and learn for myself, okay, from the flowers on the tomato plant, I will get a tomato later. Even though they're not white like that, they're actually yellow. At the back of this book, there were some extra text features that Gail Gibbons gave me to understand, and I love this part right here. It says, a from seed to plant project. This is almost like a how-to grow your plants step by step. Now, even though I'm not planting the same one she talks about, I'm thinking that based on what I read in this book, I can treat my tomato plants very similarly and get a good result. At the end of the book, she also gives some interesting extra information. And I thought it was interesting right here. They talk about the Rafflesia plant. And I know that we read a book earlier in distance learning time where they talked about that. And it says the biggest flower in the world grows on the island of Sumatra. It can weigh up to 25 pounds and can be 4 feet across. So that's some of the same information. I made a connection for that to that other book. So boys and girls, as you go forward in your reading work this week, in your learning plan, it does say to make sure you include some informational reading. If you have gotten signed up through Epic, through the links that I sent your parents, there are tons of informational books that you can find in Epic, tons on Raz Kids, any access that you have to get to some good reading materials you can use. Our quote for this week is another really simple one. Last week was thumbs up. This week is just breathe. we're kind of nearing the end of second grade, and it's not what we wanted. I know we missed out on some of our field trips and some important end of the year things, but I just want to remind you that even though we have some disappointing things that have happened, we just need to breathe through it, and we will get through this together. I'll see you soon.